Hello, and thank you for joining me in our life group discussion related to a brand new series called Adulting. And I want to take a minute to welcome my two guests. Hello, Sean.
Hello, Pastor
And David. Thank you for joining me today. And I want to say well done for making sure that you are part of a life group for this series. It is going to be the means by which you get maximum input from the series. So let's get going. The series is called Adulting. Adulting. Now, that is a fairly new term as far as language is concerned. And David, what does it mean? What does it mean to adult?
Well, I was actually chatting to one of the young adults yesterday, and they were literally explaining that adulting is not getting the most recent and most expensive phone, because it literally means that you have to grow up. And there's a lot of teenagers and a lot of young adults that don't want to grow up, getting used to your mom having to do everything for you and then changing into a space where you have to do that for yourself. It's a bit difficult.
Okay. And so would you agree that just because you've turned 18 or 21 doesn't mean you're an adult yet?
Exactly.
That's actually the beginning of a journey of adulting.
Yeah, actually, you could even say adulting is learning how to do stuff.
Okay, responsibly.
Yeah.
Responsibly.
Yeah.
Sean, you're an educator.
Yes.
So you work with children all day, but you're also a dad of two young girls. Yes. So what is your role as an older person, as a father figure?
Yes.
What is your role in terms of teaching kids to adult?
Yeah, I think part of it is not to allow them to have life too easy. Because I don't think adulting has got to do with age. I think it's got to do with choice at the end of the day.
Yeah.
You've got to decide when you grow up. And sometimes with children, they're mollycoddled a bit too much. Parents don't allow them to go through the tough times. They sort out everything for them. And then there comes a time where a child has to then face these consequences for the first time, and it's difficult. Whereas actually, they should allow them age appropriate to go through those challenges and realize this is part of life.
Yeah.
I mean, I think ultimately you want people to be independent and interdependent, not dependent on people.
Yeah.
I see that from a teaching perspective, and then I think from a dad also, I try to do that with my girls. I'm trying to work myself out of a job so that they can be independent and make their own decision.
Yeah, that's great. So the series is actually based off Peter's first letter that he wrote to the church. Now, I want to give you a bit of context here. When he wrote this letter, or let me put it this way, the reason why he wrote this letter to the church was because at the time, the church was under heavy persecution. And Peter wanted to address the Christians who are now scattered all over the place because they're literally running for their lives. Sure. And he says to them, you need to be careful how you respond or react to this persecution that you are facing. You can either do so in an immature way or a mature way. And you would think that if he wrote a letter to a persecuted church, he would say something like, we're praying for you, you poor people. We love you. Do the best that you can. Remember, Jesus loves you. Just hide out somewhere, wait on the Lord or whatever. But he does something that is quite unexpected. He actually tells them, this is your moment to grow up. This is your moment to learn what it means to adult in persecution. In fact, do you want to read us that one pivotal verse where that describes it all?
Yeah, where things change. Okay, so 1 Peter chapter 2, verse 1 to 3. So get rid of all evil behavior. Be done with all deceit, hypocrisy, jealousy, and all unkind speech. Like newborn babies, you must crave pure spiritual milk, so that you will grow into a full experience of salvation. Cry out for this nourishment, now that you have had a taste of the Lord's kindness.
Wow. So he's actually saying to them, you must be careful that your persecution doesn't cause you to become babies and be immature in the way you respond. He says to him, this is your moment to check your heart, see what comes out of you as a result of the persecution.
Yeah.
You need to adult. Let me ask you guys a question. Have you ever felt persecuted? I mean, for them back then, they were literally running for their lives. And I suppose many Christians today are still doing the same. But have you ever felt persecuted in some context, on some level?
Yeah, I think for me, high school was a really traumatic experience, especially the last year of it. I was actually telling Milani, I was letting him know that my last year in high school was very difficult because a lot of people would get annoyed whenever I mentioned the gospel. You know, a lot of people would get annoyed, especially my closest friends, of which a wedge started to grow between us. They would no longer listen to me or include me in things because of my belief. So I think that was just, while persecuting in a sense, but also it gave me like strength and encouragement to know that I'm doing the right thing and that somebody in my classroom, even if it's just one, somebody will desire to know Jesus Christ because I decided to share the gospel. So, yeah.
Sean?
I think for me, Pastor Jay, most of it is maybe being excluded from things. And I think it's more just a case of people know who you are, they know your standards, how you're trying to live, and then suddenly you find out half your friends have been invited to this or that, and you're not invited to that. And it's more a subtle thing of they going, we don't want that guy here, he won't approve or that. So I guess that's part of it. It's not major persecution, but I think it's more from the more sly side from there. But you either stand for something or you don't. You've got to accept those.
And of course, these days you have your typical cancel culture that is happening. That is a form of persecution as well. What does that bring out of you? You said earlier on when you went through that in high school, it reminded you that you're on the right path. But what kind of emotions does it bring out of you? What kind of immaturity does it actually bring out of you in those moments?
That's a very interesting question. I'd say that firstly, it brings out like a sort of annoyance and like anger, where you're like, why is this happening to me? Why am I feeling so excluded? Why can't I find a place in the world? Why isn't Christianity fun? You know, you start to have those thoughts run through your head, and at other times, you just like give up. You're like, it is what it is. You know, you'll have lunch on your own at break, contemplating on how you should have like cleaned your desk better, or you know, the different colors you should have put in your book. So it's like a bit of self-pity.
Exactly.
You're like, I wonder how God made the sky. You know, you just thinking about those things. So I think, man, you just feel like, oh, even though I'm going through these things, well, I've chosen to pick up my cross and I've chosen to follow Jesus, and it is what it is, man. It is what it is.
And you mentioned it starts in your thoughts. It's the way we process it in our thoughts. And it's interesting, Paul actually wrote to the Colossians, and this is the one thing he warns them about. He says, be careful what goes on in your thoughts, because it can begin to translate into your attitudes, your emotions, your... Do you want to read that passage for us? It's a very, very interesting one.
It's Colossians 3, verses 1 to 3. It says, since you have been raised to new life with Christ, set your sights on the realities of heaven, where Christ sits in the place of honor at God's right hand. Think about the things of heaven, not the things of the earth. For you died to this life, and your real life is hidden with Christ in God.
Wow.
It's a powerful verse.
It's a very, very powerful word. It reminds the Christians that your life doesn't belong to you. It belongs to God. And that is the same mindset we have to have in spaces of persecution, when we feel like the world wants to cancel us, wants to isolate us, reject us because of what we believe. So this is an interesting topic, and it's going to be a very interesting series. In fact, going forward, we're going to discuss very specific areas, which Peter does in his letter. We're going to bring those areas into the 21st century where we are, and we are going to talk about that. One of them is going to be how we relate to the government and authority. Sometimes we feel persecuted by authority. We're going to talk about that. We're going to talk about how that relates to our relationships with one another, and the most intimate of those relationships specifically, and that is marriage. We're going to talk about how this works out in the workplace and in life in general, but we're going to take it one step at a time. What we need you to do right now is to have a discussion in your life group, and I'm going to give you 3 questions that will help spark your discussion. Here they are. Question number 1. What does persecution look like in the 21st century? The second question, how confident are you that you have responded to persecution in a mature manner? And question number 3, is there a specific area in your life where you struggle to, as Paul said, set your sights on the realities of heaven? Talk about these struggles, and pray for each other in your group before you close. Until next time, enjoy your discussion.